Hey, welcome to Flight Test. I'm Josh. Today we're going to be showing you how to build the FT Simple Cub. Now, if you haven't seen the release video of the FT Simple Cub, it's basically a plane that's simple to build, simple to fly, but loads of fun. Now, this plane also has the ability to go from a 3-channel to a 4-channel, or even having fun accessories like little foam drop bombs. Now, in this video, we're going to be showing you how to build the basic 3-channel version. This is going to be the most simple to fly and simple to build, and going to get you in the air the quickest. Later on, you can come back and add the features like the flaps and the ailerons and the bomb drops, but that's going to be in a video that's going to be linked down below. Our encouragement is that you get out there, get flying, have some fun, build your skills, and then come back and change it to 4-channel later. Now, if you haven't already, you can support us by buying the Speedbuild kit through our store, or you can download our free plans, and a big shout out to the beta builders at Dan Sponholz for helping to make those as good as possible. Let's go ahead and get our materials in order and we'll get started. Now, one thing you're going to notice if you support us by going to the store and getting a Speedbuild kit, there's a lot more than just 11 pieces here. The reason is we wanted to give you things like scale detail, some fun bomb drops, and other features like the engine cowl that's going to give you even more scale appearance and make the experience more fun. You don't need to use all of this in order to have fun with a simple version of the Simple Cub. Before we start building, we're going to want to build our power pod. Now, our power pod is interchangeable with other models with a similar motor type. This is our B motor here, and as we move along and as technology changes, you may see the appearance of the B motor change or the C motor change, but just know when we talk about B motors and compatibility, they're all interchangeable. We're going to show you how to build the power pod right now, but it's going to have the C motor installed. Don't worry, there's going to be holes that line up perfectly with our B motor, just screw it in there. In this portion of the build, we're going to show you how to create the power pod, mount the motor and the electronics, and make sure your motor's running in the proper direction. Now that we have our servos centered, we're going to go ahead and move our attention towards the power pod. Now, this power pod is a little bit of an updated style. It still is backwards compatible with all of our previous designs, but we have a couple cut holes here just to help you route the ESC on the top inside the power pod or on the bottom below the power pod. So let's go ahead and get our materials in order. We're going to go ahead and take our firewall that's included in the kit and also our power pod that you see here, and we're going to go ahead and clear out the cavities here and here. I'm going to just take my razor blade, lightly guide it down. And a very cool tip is you can actually dull the very tip of your razor blade so that way you can get closer to the paper without cutting through. Let's go ahead and fold this over 180 degrees. And if we cut down far enough, close enough to the paper, this is going to come out in one nice clean chunk. If it doesn't, don't worry about that. You can always take your razor blade and scrape it out. One more time. There we go. Nice clean cavities both here and here. Now, with all of our models, there's something that's very common called an A-fold and a B-fold. These are fold techniques that we're going to use throughout all of our models that we designed to make the building process easier and more efficient. What we're going to have here is an A-fold. And if you look at the cross section, that A-fold explains exactly how we want the airplane to fold together. We want the side plates above the bottom plate, so think A above. So we're going to go ahead and do a practice here real quick. We're going to leave our side plate on the ground or on the table, and we're going to rotate the bottom plate up so that the side plate sits above the bottom plate, and we can use the table as our friend to get a nice square joint. While we're doing this, always keep your triangle close by. So now that we have a nice fit here, we're going to go ahead and take our hot glue gun. This is an AdTech Pro 200. It delivers plenty of glue. We're going to start about 1/4 inch from the edge, and we're going to deliver most of our glue on the edge that's going to be glued, not on the paper. We're going to stop about 1/4 inch from the end. Once again, repeating that motion, 90 degrees up, pushing against the table. The more times that you take your square and you go to the foam and make sure it's nice and square, the better your build's going to be. So after about 30 seconds, we're going to go ahead and repeat this process on the other side. Before we ever apply glue, you always want to make sure that you practice the fold first. This is going to help you with muscle memory and also help you make sure that everything is going to go together nicely. We're happy with that. Once again, we're back to our hot glue gun, starting about 1/4 inch from the edge, 1 centimeter for our metric friends, and ending about 1 centimeter or 1/4 inch from the other end. Back on the table, side plate goes against the table, bottom plate rotates up 90 degrees, and we're going to hold it 90 degrees and use our triangle friend to make sure we're square. Give these joints a good 30 seconds, hum a song in your head, You Are My Sunshine's my favorite one to go to, and make sure you let the glue dry properly. Now that our glue joint is dried, we're going to go ahead and install our firewall. If you have any kind of little glue balls that are sticking out, go ahead and remove those now. Now for the firewall, we have just a little bit more material than we need, but what we want to see is roughly 1 thickness of foam board sitting above. The rest can go ahead and protrude down, no problem. Once we've made our fit, we're going to go ahead and go to our power pod. We're going to put a nice healthy bead right on the top. For our laser cuts kits, it's a little bit of underscore because of the laser. And that helps that bead sit nice and down, but make sure you put enough on that it's actually going to adhere to the firewall. Making sure we don't burn our fingers. I'm going to go ahead and set that down there. We're only looking for about the thickness of the foam on the top. On some of our designs we have two skewers that poke through and this aligns. We don't want this to change the thrust angle too much. But we have a little bit of room for wiggle. After about 30 seconds, our power pod's nice and dry. We don't want to go ahead and go to our next step and screw the motor in. We want to actually reinforce this with tape. This is absolutely crucial whenever you build a power pod, whether it's a mini or a full size, because the glue's not going to hold the motor on by itself. And if it does, after the first or second flight, it will break free. The tape is where you get all of your strength. So we're going to give ourselves about a foot. And we're going to start right about this notch right here. And then applying a little bit of tension, we're going to go to the other side. And then we're going to finish off on this side here. Now there's lots of different tapes you can use. You can use extreme packing tape with the cords in it, or you can just use this packaging tape here. But make sure you have nice and good adhesion all the way along. I'm actually just using my little triangle here and smoothing this out the best I can. Fold that over, just like wrapping a gift. So we're going to do this one more time, but in this case we're going to go from the front and wrap onto the bottom. Once again, we're going to use about a foot of tape. We're going to double it up right as you see right here. Smooth that out. Nice thing about our brown water resistant foam boards. There we are. You can reapply as many times as you need. And just to help this power pod be a little bit more durable, I'm going to go ahead and apply a little bit of tape and kind of round off these tabs that it sits into. This is going to keep those tabs from delaminating when you take that power pod in and out. If anyone doesn't know about the power pod, our desire is to get people in the air as economically as possible. The electronics are by far the most expensive items on your aircraft, and we want to give you the freedom to take the electronics out and match them with planes with light power plants. So all of our swappable series, you can take this power pod and swap it to it. And we have multiple different power packs, but in this power pod we have the B pack and the C pack. The motor we're going to be putting on is the 2215-09, and that's our C pack. That's for our warbirds and our bigger aircraft and our more experienced flyers. If you're flying something smaller that takes a full-size swappable, you're probably going to be referred to a B pack. And all of our airplanes that we design, we refer to the best power pack that we recommend in every single one. So there won't be any confusion. Now that we have our power pod all taped up, I'm just going to go ahead and take my barbecue skewer and open up our little holes here. These outer holes are for the C pack, and the inner holes are for the B pack. I'm also going to open up our little wire guide right here. And always make sure that you open up the center area that you see here. You can even take your razor blade and kind of open that up with that. Reason being is this is where the shaft's going to go through, and you don't want that binding, whether it's on the mini power pod or the big one. That slight drag that you're going to have is going to be enough to cause your ESC to heat up and your motor to heat up and possibly not work at all. So our power pod's done. We're going to go ahead and open up our motor. This is the Emax 2215. This has been a motor we've been using literally for years now, and we absolutely love it. We're also going to be partnering with Emax to hopefully make a Flite Test branded version of this with a couple other features, but that'll be in the future. This motor has a lot of versatility to it. It can be mounted in two different ways. I want to just open this up and show you all the pieces. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our 1.5mm screw that's included in our C packs. We want to give you guys basic tools, so we give you a really nice Phillips head and a really nice 1.5mm screwdriver included in that kit. And we're going to remove this top plate here. Now, keeping these screws right next to us, we're just going to take off this little cover piece that you see here. We'll remove the screws from our adapter plate. We'll set this down, line up our holes, and refasten it with the exact same screws we just removed. Don't tighten them down firmly until you get all four of your screws in place. Now that we have our adapter plate on, if we want to keep from losing these screws, we can do so just by sliding it back on and tightening it up. It's really important we don't put the prop on until the airplane's fully built and ready to be test flown. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the screws from our pack here. You're going to notice that we have screws to both mount the firewall to the motor and also to the firewall and the power pod. So first we're going to put our X mount on there. We'll line up our holes. You're going to notice it only goes one way. We have shorts and longs. And we're going to take our machine screws and drop them down in. This Phillips head is specifically sized to be able to work great with all of the screws that come with our power packs and also our servos. Even down to the 4.5 gram ones. And as before, we don't tighten everything down firmly until we get all 4 screws in. One, just like a tire. 2, 3, and 4. Now that we have our motor mounted, we're going to go ahead and fasten it onto our power pod. Pass these wires right through the hole here. In some cases the power pod is going to have the ESC be external for cooling, other times it's going to be internal for cooling. So you're just going to have to look at the build video and how it's set up on the main portion to see how you set up your power pod. You're going to notice these screws line up really nicely with our firewall. And we're going to drop in our wood grain screws right into the top. Take our Phillips head. If you're scratch building this at home, make sure that your firewalls are aircraft grade plywood. If you choose to put the top one in here, just be careful that you don't poke your finger. Now that we have our power pod on, for this model specifically, we're going to be mounting our ESC on the very bottom, and the battery is actually going to slide through a top hatch. On other models, it may be the exact opposite. You may have your ESC in here, and then the battery will feed around and it will plug in and your battery will mount on the bottom. Everyone's going to be just a little bit different. We're just going to open this up here. We'll pass these wires through. And now we can make the connection with our ESC. Doesn't matter which order that you plug this in, because once we check for rotation, we'll be able to know immediately whether we need to reverse these two or not. So let's go ahead and stop right here, and we'll bring our servo tester back into play. We're going to plug this in with the ground lined up with the ground, and we're also going to turn it into manual mode and turn the dial all the way to 0. Now we can plug in our ESC to our battery. And for this model, we want the motor to spin counterclockwise. So if you look at this, you can see that the motor is spinning counterclockwise. A really good way to tell is if you have clockwise windings like you see here, which is basically righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, the nut pulled in. That's a very good sign. If your motor's backwards and you're using a conventional counterclockwise prop, the motor will spin off. So that's all set up the way we want it. I'm going to go ahead and unplug this. We'll put the extra pieces to the side here. The last thing I'm going to do just to prepare for this model that we're building is I'm going to pass both the battery connector and also the ESC wire through the top. We're just going to dress this up with a piece of tape. Put this all the way to the back. Every model is going to be just a little bit different, so just keep that in mind. The build video will explain exactly where you need to mount it. I'm going to take a piece of tape and just put a piece of tape right down like you see here. That'll hold it in place nicely. Now we can dress up the other wires exactly the same way and put a piece of tape to hold those down as well. Make sure that you don't have any brass touching each other, or else it'll short out the motor and the ESC. Now that we've completed our swappable power pod, we're going to go ahead and put our attention towards the airframe. But before we do our airframe, we're going to go ahead and center our servos. We're going to show you how to center our servos now, but make sure when you install the ES0882 servos that you install the servo arm that looks like this. Now it's really important before we install the servos that we center them and we also install the proper servo horns. This is going to change from model to model. So in this one here, these are the 9051s. This process is the same even if you're using the ES0882s, which are 9 gram servos. These are 4.5 grams. In this build, we're going to be using the smaller of the X control horns, which is this one right here. Now you're going to notice that there's 2 arms that are longer and 2 arms that are shorter. We're going to preserve only one of the shortest arms. So we're going to take this and flip it over on its back, and we're going to cut off the extra 3. Watch your eyes. These servos are incredibly high quality, even though they're very economical. I'm going to put this on to show you how well centered they are from the factory. I'm going to plug this into our servo centering tool. If you don't have one of these tools, it is so convenient and so useful in so many ways. I strongly recommend you getting it. This is only about $7 from our store. We'll have a link down below for you to use. On the side of a servo centering tool, you're going to notice 3 indicators. You got your servo, which is your signal wire, your positive, and your negative. We're going to line up the ground wire with the negative, the power's in the middle, and the signal wire, which is usually white or yellow, will be on the top. For powering this, a simple quick tip that you can do if you don't have a single cell battery is using the balance lead of a 2 or 3 cell battery. Now you're going to notice on the battery you always have a power indicated wire. So here's your positive red, all the rest are considered negatives, and we're going to only take the red 1 up to line up with the power and the ground on the servo centering tool. You don't want to put a 2 cell on this because it's going to destroy your tool and your servos and void your warranty. So now I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to plug my power line into the middle, my ground going down towards the bottom, and now I have 1 cell worth of power. Now you're going to notice that these multiple ports are here. It doesn't matter which plug you plug in to power your unit, and you can center 3 servos at one time. This tool also works to test motors and ESCs. Now that we have this, you can see that I can move my servo back and forth with no problem. Now I was talking about how well centered this is up. I'm going to turn this to the extreme, and I'm going to clip center, and you're going to see it's spot on from the factory. You never want to take this for granted, because if you do and you install this and you power it on, you're going to use all your sub trims and all your trim to override it. What centered servo technically is basically just telling the servo to be in the center position so it has equal throws both ways. Now with this servo guide, if I flip the center and you see something like this, all you need to do is install your servo horn at 90 degrees. Once we're happy with that center, we're going to drop in the shortest little screw and twist it down in. You notice with my fingers I supported the screw as I turned it in so I didn't strip out the gears. Now we're going to do the exact same on the opposite one. The only difference is we want this servo horn to go the other direction. Kaboomskis. Plug it in. There you go, once again centered beautifully. Drop the shortest screw in our pack in there. And there we have it. The Emax servo is one of our favorite servos. We've been using them forever. The only time we ever get failures is in a very hard crash or if someone puts too much voltage through it. Alright, our servos are now centered. Our control horns are on. We're ready to move to the next step. In this portion of the build, we're going to show you how to assemble the main wing, the center spar, join the halves, and glue it all together. For building the wing, we're going to pull out these 5 individual pieces. We're going to have our 2 main wing halves, our center spar, and also 2 wing gauges. To prep our pieces, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up this cavity here. We're going to do this by carefully taking our razor blade, making sure we don't cut through the paper on the bottom side, and guiding it through. If you're worried about cutting through the bottom, a pro tip would be to dull the very edge of the razor blade on a piece of sandpaper or concrete. If this is your first time you've ever built a swappable or one of our foam board models, this technique is going to be very common with all of them. These planes fold together, and the cavities that we open up is the area that they're going to fold onto. Now that we've prepped all the areas where we want the cavities to go, we're going to go ahead and fold this over 180 degrees, and we're going to carefully lift the paper out. If a little bit of residue is left behind, that's okay. You can always go back and scrape it off later. At the end, you just want a nice clean cavity. Last piece. Once again, we're going 180 degrees over. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and leave these pieces here. We'll just kind of go over as a recap here. We're going to have our two main wing pieces. We have the center cavities removed from both, and we have our one center spar with our long cavities removed from each of these. So let's go ahead and put these two pieces to the side and put our attention on the center spar. Our center spar is made with an A-fold. An A-fold is where the side plates are above the bottom plate. So think A above. To make a proper A-fold, we're going to go ahead and leave the side plate on the table, and we're going to rotate the bottom plate up 90 degrees, pushing down firmly against the table. Just like you see here. Anytime that we're making anything with an A or a B fold, we're always going to practice the fold first to make sure that we have no obstructions or no issues, and that we can get to our 90-degree angle. Now that we're happy with it, we're going to go ahead and take our hot glue gun, making sure we have plenty of hot glue. And we're going to favor the hot glue, starting about a ½ inch from the edge, and stopping about a ½ inch from the edge. Notice that I'm putting the majority of the glue favoring the bottom of the foam. And that's because we don't want to glue the paper to the actual spar. We want to glue the foam. We're going to glue the same space as before. We're going to rotate it up 90 degrees. Doing the same step as before, rotating the spar up 90 degrees, making our A-fold. We're going to hold this for about 45 seconds. Once the glue is thoroughly dried, we're going to go ahead and flip it 180 degrees, do the exact same process. As before, we're going to go to a test fold, making sure everything fits nice, and then favoring the glue on the bottom of the foam, starting about a ½ inch and ending a ½ inch. We have a nice thin bead of glue. Now, one thing about the speed build kits, or even if you're scratch building, you're going to have plenty of extra foam. Feel free to go ahead and make a piece that's similar to this and practice those folds ahead of time, so that way you can do it right on the actual piece. While we're holding down, it doesn't hurt to take a square piece of foam or a triangle and check and make sure you're holding everything down nice and square. If you're missing some of these common tools like hot glue guns, triangles, razor blades, we do sell a really great crafty kit which gives you everything you need to be able to build all of our models. Screwdrivers, hot glue guns, glue, cutting board, etc. 45 seconds have passed. We've now done our main spar. We're going to go ahead and join our two wings and move on. What we have down here is a fold over. Fold over is what we like to call a C-fold, but we're just going to fold this over 180 degrees on the edge. Once we've completed our fold, we'll put a nice thin stripe of glue right down the middle and another stripe of glue right on the very top. Now be really careful because the heat's going to pass through the paper much easier than it's going to pass through the foam. So I'm going to put most of my pressure on the very, very top here. We're going to hold this down for about 30 to 45 seconds. Alright, we're going to repeat the exact same process on the other side. Quick test fit, making sure everything looks good. Thin bead of glue. Folding up 180 degrees. Before we join our two wings together, it's going to be easier to do the double bevel while they're apart. So we're going to go ahead and take this and we're going to fold it in half right along the leading edge here. And we're going to cut our first bevel. Now if you've never cut a bevel before, I'll show you how to do that right now. We're going to take our razor blade and hold it at an acute angle like this, not like this. We're going to taper the blade from the center line where the paper is, not cutting through the paper, to about a 45-degree angle. Now we have a really great video showing techniques how to build without using a razor blade. You're welcome to watch that video and try that yourself. You can even use sandpaper and sand this bevel in as well. So this technique we're going to do a double bevel, but I'm going to show you how to do it while resting it against the table. Once again, we're going to hold the blade at a nice acute angle, keeping it just above the paper. And we're going to glide right on through. Once again, you have plenty of scrap foam. You can easily try this technique on plenty of pieces of scrap before going to your wing. good way to make sure you have a good bevel cut is to make sure that you can lift up the edge at least 90 degrees without any resistance. That's going to ensure that you can fold over the wing without applying too much resistance and breaking your leading edge. Now that both of our wing halves have been prepared, we're going to go ahead and lay it on the leading edge of the table with our little fold overs kind of hanging out of the edge so it's a nice flat surface. We're going to move both halves together and we're going to tape them there. The easiest way to tape on foam is to separate the two halves and lay the tape on one half, work it down, and then join it to the other half while lifting up on the tape. This keeps it from sticking before it's nice and square and lined up. Make sure your leading and trailing edges line up perfectly before setting the tape down on the other side. There we go. Now don't worry about these extra pieces of tape because we're going to be able to fold those over later. What we want to do is we want to lift this up to about a 45-degree angle, and we're going to put a nice healthy bead of glue right down the center. We're going to lay the wing nice and flat on the table, pressing down firmly. And just an extra scrap piece of foam, we can wipe off the excess. This is actually going to force the glue down into the crack, but it's also going to remove any excess weight. While we're letting this dry, I'm just going to go ahead and pop out these little aileron holes. This plane can be either a 3-channel or a 4-channel, or we can use these servo holes for additional bomb drops. So I'm going to pop them out now because I'm going to build this as a 4-channel wing. Fold these over. Alright, our glue is dry. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next step. You're going to notice that the spar, the 3 holes will line up perfectly. On the very ends, you're going to have little hash marks that are also going to help you keep this nice and straight. So let's go ahead and line this up. And what you're going to notice is that these rectangles stop just at the very edge of the spar. Once you're happy with the alignment, we're going to rotate this over 180 degrees, exposing the bottom. And we're going to put a nice healthy bead of glue right down the middle. Alright. Let's go ahead and flip this over 180 degrees. We'll line up all of our marks again, and then we're going to press down firmly. Hold this for about 45 seconds. Now that our spar is dried, we're going to go ahead and start putting a contour to the wings. The easiest way to do that is to lightly roll this over, and you're going to notice it's naturally going to fold right on that score cut. If you're scratch building this, you're going to see score cuts as labeled as red marks. Dan Sponholz has done a wonderful job with the plans. They all have keys next to them, so you'll be able to understand what they mean. We're going to go ahead and just give this a quick test fold, just slowly roll it over, as you see here. We want to make sure that the wing's going to take shape before we put any glue down, and that we're happy with that. The back trailing edge should just touch the back of the table, and you should feel a little resistance right where our fold over is, right here. That looks great. Before I fold this over, I'm just going to go ahead and cut straight down here and knock out our little control horn slots. To give the wing a little bit extra strength, I'm going to put the edge of the hot glue gun right in there and put a thin ribbon of glue right down through the center. And if you have a bigger hot glue gun, you can do 2 stripes. If your hot glue gun is smaller, go ahead and just do 1 at a time. Now before the hot glue dries, I'm going to fold this over and I'm going to hold the wing in its shape. I'm going to give it about 45 seconds. What this is going to do is make your wing incredibly strong and also keep it from delaminating in the future. You'll notice now that the glue is dried, the wing holds its shape naturally and we don't have to force it anymore. Making sure we have plenty of glue in our hot glue gun, we're going to go ahead and do 1 strip right down the leading edge. Whoops. Okay, I missed a little bit. 1 strip on the spar. And then 1 more strip on the rear portion of the spar. If you have a glue gun that can deliver the hot glue, you can even do the trailing edge. If not, save this for a separate step. We're now going to fold this over. And you notice I'm spreading my hands wide over. I'm not pushing down my fingertips, but I'm using the flats of my hands to give nice even pressure. I'm really focusing heavy on the back trailing edge right here to make sure it's firmly against the table and that the wing isn't twisted. One thing you're going to notice about the placement of my hands, they're wide apart and they're spread out over the foam, and I'm really making sure that the back trailing edge is firmly against the table. We're going to hold this for about a minute. Alright, about a minute has passed, and I'm going to go ahead and release this. Now if you release this and you notice that the wing's kind of unfolding, go ahead and hold it down a little bit longer. Make sure the glue is thoroughly dried. And also, a good way to check the test of your wing is this center portion here between the front fold and the back fold should be parallel with the bottom surface of the table. If you follow these steps, it's going to work out just great. Now, as I said before, if you don't have a bigger hot glue gun, you'd normally want to do this in a separate step. That would be as easily as riding the tip of your hot glue gun right down the edge, flipping it over, and then pressing down firmly. So we have a nice beautiful wing here, but it's flat. We need to put dihedral, and what dihedral does is it actually brings stability to the airframe by making it auto level. We're first going to go ahead and clear off any extra foam that we may have in the center section. And we're also going to go ahead and lightly cut down through the spars right over these areas here. This is going to be to help our wing take a nice dihedral bend, as you see here. We're going to go ahead and lift each side of the wing up, making sure that it'll accept that bend and not resist too much. Now that we're happy with that, we're going to slide our dihedral gauges right at the furthest tip of the wing, so that way it'll hold our wing up in the shape that we want. We're going to do this on both wings at the same time. Our next step is to make sure we have plenty of hot glue, and we're going to force a nice healthy bead of glue right down to the center portion of both halves of our wing. Be very careful at this step because there's going to be lots of hot glue by your fingers and you don't want to burn yourself. Now we're going to press down right in the middle, and we're going to squeegee off any excess glue that we may have. We're going to hold this for a good minute to a minute and a half. You can also use weights at this step to be able to hold this longer so that you don't feel rushed. This is one portion of the build I'd strongly encourage you to be patient with. This glue is going to hold your dihedral together, but we don't want to only rely on the glue. We want to give it some strength too. So if you find yourself lifting up and that the wing kind of wants to open up or flatten out, go ahead and hold it down just a little bit longer. Now that we have the dihedral that we want, we're going to go ahead and take some tape and reinforce this area. What I like to do is I like to go 1/2 on each side. So one stripe here, nice and tight, and just fold it around. And same process on the other side. Now at this point your wing center section is all complete. We're ready to move on, but you can later update this to a 4-channel wing by simply dropping in your servos and cutting out your ailerons. In this portion of the build, we're going to show you how to build and assemble your fuselage. Now that we're done with our wings, we're going to go ahead and put our attention towards the fuselage. This is going to be your main fuselage area. We're going to have 2 doublers, we're going to have the bottom plates, and we're going to have the tail over here. The first thing we want to do, just like our wings, we want to clear out the cavities where we need the folds. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Generally, any time that you see a cavity about the width of the foam, that's going to be an area that needs to be removed. But always follow along with the video in case there's sometimes any special instructions. We're also going to go ahead and put a score line here. And we'll just go ahead and trace everything out with the razor blade before we go back and remove it. Taking your time and doing this step right is going to give you the best experience. folds right here. Alright, let's go ahead and start removing our foam. We'll just lay this flat on the table and very carefully just roll the foam off. Move this front piece. So let's go ahead and remove the center portion right here too. So pulled that off there. Sometimes you snag this one popping a piece out. Don't worry at all about that. Notice how even with these thin pieces, I'm just kind of holding the piece that I don't want to tear and supporting it as I pull off that excess foam. Now, once we replace these cavities, we're also going to go ahead and remove the foam from this piece right here, and then from this center section right here. Let's lay this out and just review this. Make sure I have everything we need. So here's our piece once again. We've removed the cavity of foam around the edge, the front, and removed the paper. We've also removed the paper from both sides, as you see right here. And we've also removed the paper here and the cavities all around the edges. We can go ahead and put these two pieces aside right by our tail section. And let's go ahead and glue our doublers. This doubler is going to serve two purposes. It's going to support our landing gear and our pontoon option. It's also going to act as a slide that's going to enable us to slide our power pod in and out very easily. On the main fuselage section, you're going to notice an etch line. The etch line on the plane is going to be noted as a blue line. We're going to go ahead and line that up, making sure we're happy with the fit. Once we are, we'll go ahead and apply a bead of glue. Doesn't have to be too much. Now we're going to replace it right back over the etch lines. Move it back and forth, thinning out that glue as much as possible, and then holding it in place. Take extra care to make sure that the line right here is most accurately followed. Same process on the other side. Always test fit, always make sure we're happy. One thing this tells us, whenever we test fit it, now we know the exact side we have to put the glue on, which is going to be this side here. Nice thin bead of glue. Right back over the etch lines. Wiggle it back and forth. And once again, we're taking careful note to make sure that this etch line right on the top here is most accurately followed. Now that both of our doublers are properly glued in, we're going to go ahead and establish a crease line on this very back edge. If you have the Speedboat kit, you should be able to easily lift this up nice and gently, and it'll crease right on that etch line. If you're doing this with the plans, you're going to have to crease this with your fingernail or very carefully with a razor blade. Lift up on both these edges, and what we're doing is we're matching the angle of the back section here. Now that we've established our bends on both sides of the fuselage, we're going to go ahead and practice a B-fold. A B-fold is where the side plates are beside the bottom plate. So A above, B beside. We're going to go ahead and do a test fold, and you're going to notice we keep the bottom plate firmly against the table, and this time we're going to rotate the side plate up and making sure that we have a nice firm fit all along of our building surface. This is also a really good time. If you don't already have a triangle like you see here, make sure you get one. This is all included in our crafty kit if you don't need that and you want everything you need to build. Alright, that sits nice and 90 degrees perpendicular. We're happy with that. Now for the B fold, we're going to focus our glue on the side of the bottom plate, unlike on the A fold where it was on the side of the top plate. Nice healthy bead. We're going to stop just about a ½ inch short of that crease right there. Same process as before. We're going to fold it up, making sure we're firmly against the table. And we're going to also put careful attention to make sure that our bend here is nice and seated against the bottom plate. Check for square. The more often that you check for square, the more often that everything's going to be perfect. If you start doing this from the beginning of the build, you're going to find that everything just fits better together. We're going to give this about 45 seconds. I like to hum "You're My Sunshine" in my head. Alright, so our 45 seconds is done. We go ahead and inspect it, make sure we're happy with the way everything looks. We're going to do the same process on the other side. Once again, B fold, bottom plate's against the table, rotate up 90 degrees. We want a nice clean edge all the way back to the tail. You're going to notice these two portions should be nice and parallel to each other, along with all the other areas of the fuselage. We'll open this up, making sure we have plenty of hot glue handy in case we need. I'm going to start about ½ inch shy. Just give that extra room for the hot glue to squeeze out. And about a ½ inch shy of the tail. Back on the table, 90 degrees up, holding it at 90. That little triangle just kind of keeps us honest. It keeps us from keeping it too wide or keeping it too tight. Both circumstances you can still move forward, but the plane's not going to look as nice. Now that both of our side plates are glued up 90 degrees, we're going to go ahead and put our attention towards this plate you see right here. We're going to go ahead and open this up. This should be a nice etched line, but I'm going to go ahead and just cut a little bit of a crease here, just so we can make it like a door. I'm going to slide this right on in, all the way to the very back, nice and flush with the tail of the fuselage. Now before we glue this on, we're going to do a couple things to this front portion here. We're going to put a slight bead of glue right on the edge, and using the table as our friend, we're going to fold it up 90. We're going to count 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're going to fold right back down flat against the table. Count 10. And I like to just kind of rock it to make sure I didn't glue it. This is going to be a nice decorative edge. It's going to keep it from delaminating, but it's also going to be a nice rigid spot that the landing gears can be able to friction fit right on through. Also, you're going to notice that there's a nice curve on this back portion here. It's a lot easier at this point now just to slightly rock this up and then establish a very gentle curve that's going to make this portion glued even nicer. We've already test fitted this already, so we're going to go ahead and place our glue on, and we're going to favor our glue on the very edge of the foam, splitting the glue at half and half between the foam and the paper. This is an AdTech Pro 200 hot glue gun. Kind of like the 357 Magnum of the hot glue guns. It'll never run out of hot glue. It's industrial in nature. It's also overkill if you're going to build smaller models. But if you like this building experience, I'd definitely recommend that investment. You see I've slid this in. I'm going to turn this over 180 degrees and press it down firmly against the table. Anytime you can use the table as your friend and push down against it, it's going to give you a better fit and finish. It also keeps you from burning your hands. About 45 seconds have passed. We have a nice clean edge. Now we're going to open up this front end here in the same process as before. Hot bead of glue splitting the difference between the foam and the paper. Drop right there. Roll this up. You notice I'm just kind of using a piece of scrap foam because I don't want to put my fingers on that hot glue. Once again, we're going to go right over to the table, and with a rocking motion, about 15 seconds on this side, 15 seconds on the back, 15 seconds on the front, 15 seconds on the back. Alright, we've rocked it back and forth for about a minute, saving 15 seconds on this flat portion and 15 seconds on the front. You're going to notice how beautiful the finish and how sealed it looks on the bottom of your fuselage. That's exactly what we want, especially if you're going to be doing pontoons later. Now, if you're a little bit concerned about maybe there being some gaps, you can always come back here later with some Scotch tape and seal all these edges. Let's go ahead and put our attention towards this top canopy area here now. We're going to fold this over 180 degrees, and there's a couple things I want to point out. You're going to notice this little etch mark right here in the center. That's if you want to fly this FPV. You can go ahead and cut this now at this portion, and that way you can put a camera behind there and look through just as if you were the pilot. In this case, we're not going to do this quite yet, but we can always go back later and cut that out. You're going to notice this front detail, and just like on the bottom, we're going to go ahead and fold that over and glue it down. This is going to keep the prop glass from ever delaminating our foam, and also make the finish look even nicer. Easy way to do this is just to hold this up on the table, up 90 degrees, count to 15, and flat on the table, count to 15. Now we're not able to bend this down, so what we want to do is we want to cut a bevel. And this is the exact same way that we've done on the wing. We're going to glide our razor blade right through. If you cut through the paper, don't worry, we can always tape it down. And we're going to notice that this now fits nice and clean, making our windshield and our front cowling. We're going to do this one section at a time, so we're going to open this up. I'm going to paste a nice bead of glue on the top surface here. And I'm only going to put glue, splitting the difference on the first section. Anytime, like I said, that we can use a table as our friend instead of holding it with our fingers, the less burnt we're going to be and the better the fit's going to be. So we're going to get it down in general position. We're going to take it to the edge of the table and we're going to press it down. Give it about 30 to 40 seconds. If you're worried that you may have hot glued it, just move it over. So our windshield's now done. We're going to go ahead and lift this up 90 degrees. Nice healthy bead of glue right in between the foam and the paper. Carefully move it back down. A little bit of pressure. Right up against the table again. It's okay if a little glue squeezes out. The table can easily be scraped off later. I usually count to about 20 seconds. And then I'll simply just relocate it to a different part of the table. Later I go back with a flat blade or a scraper and I scrape it right off. The good thing about when you see the glue squeeze out just a little bit, it means you're losing extra weight, but every square inch of that paper is now being adhered and giving you both strength and fit. Alright, the last portion on our fuselage that we're going to put our attention to is going to be the front cowling area right here. Now you're going to notice this area is much longer and very thin in this area. Now you can choose to cut this off short, but one thing I wanted to give you the opportunity to do is to be able to seal this whole edge with this nice brown paper on the outside here. So we're going to be doing a little bit of bending, a little bit of fitting. If this gets frustrating for you or it rips, don't worry about it. It's only for looks. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put some glue down and do our fold over. Against the table, count to 10. Take it back down to our sacrificial area of our table, fold it over. Now if you're married and you want to stay happily married, do not do this on the kitchen or the dining room table. Choose a workbench or a nice flat piece of wood or put some covering down. Now we're going to go ahead and test fit this area right where the doubler begins. So you're going to see I'm going to slide this up in. It's going to leave this nice open cavity right here. I'm going to very delicately bend this down. So what I'm doing right now is I'm slightly just shaping this with my fingers, just putting a really gentle bend on the foam. The better we can match this contour, the less work we're going to have to do. There we go. Looks good. Alright, so I'm going to go to the point where this fits straight down as you see right here, but I'm not going to glue any further. Reason being is I want to be able to mold this around when I get closer to the top. Let's go ahead and put our glue down now. You notice I'm going to put some glue here, but before that, I want to get some really good glue on this doubler. So I'll put a nice healthy bead of glue on this doubler here, a bead of glue on this doubler here. If we're belly landing or we're hitting the plane hard against the ground, this is going to give us a lot of strength. Right back, we're going to stop right about here. Stop right about here. There we go. Same process as before. You notice I'm going down 10 seconds, going right back up, The only difference is I'm kind of squeezing in on both sides, making sure that both cheeks are nice and flush against the top here. Right back down, right back up. Beautiful fit right here and here. We're gonna go and continue this on at the very top. We're gonna bend this around to the point to where it hits this front area right here. And we're gonna push down just really quick. That's gonna be the portion that we cut this off at. So we'll cut that off right there. Because every scratch build, every model is going to be just a little bit different. It's always nice to have a little bit of excess, and then you can do a nice, perfect fit. Now we're actually going to come off and remove this back off here, but it's a lot easier to work with this paper with this portion on. So now we're going to favor the glue mainly on the paper for this last section, just to make the process a little bit easier. Back to the table. Fold it over, and in this case, we'll take it down to the table here and press it down firmly. Now just because this plane is a simple flyer and a simple build doesn't mean it doesn't have to look fantastic too. As I said before, you could simply just cut this off straight here and leave this part exposed, but this extra little step is going to teach you how to mold foam. It's also going to be a really great tool to keep this nice and sealed and give your plane more longevity. Alright, so we have a nice molded nose here, but the powder pot's going to go in here. So our last step here is we'll take your razor blade, just slide it right to the edge here. Cut off this section that you see here. There's one. And there's two. In this portion of the build, we're going to show you how to install the tail, your push rods, control horns, your servos, and cycle the whole system. To prepare our tail sections, we're first going to go ahead and do a single bevel on both the elevator and the rudder. Now, starting on the elevator, we're going to go ahead and fold this over 180 degrees. And typically, we'd put our bevel on the side that moves, which would be the elevator. Instead, we're going to put our single bevel on the stabilizer because there's a little bit more meat here. Once again, holding at an acute angle, making sure your razor blade's nice and sharp. We're going to go ahead and make sure that we can raise this up and that we have no resistance for at least 16 degrees. If you have resistance, all you need to do is simply go back again and get a little bit closer to the paper in the center. Don't worry if it doesn't look perfect. As long as it bends freely, you're just fine. We're going to do the same process on the back, 180 degrees flip over, except this time we're going to put our bevel on the rudder and not the fin. Single bevel. I'm holding this in the air just for the courtesy of the camera, but it's much easier if you take this down to the table. Nice clean movement on both portions. Now we really want this plane to last a long time for you, and we don't want delamination. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this up and reveal this cavity right here. We're going to go ahead and keep a scrap piece of foam that you see right here next to it, and we're going to put a thin ribbon of glue right on the center paper that you see. Now as soon as we put this glue down, we're going to come back with a scrap piece of foam, and we're going to go ahead and scrape all the excess off. What we're doing is we're actually pushing the hot glue down into both the foam and the paper, and we're fusing it all together. This is going to make a nice hot glue reinforcement hinge, and it's going to make this plane last for a very long time. Same process on the back here. Grab a different piece of scrap foam, putting a nozzle right down on the center of the paper, super thin bead of glue. Remember, everything you put off or put on, you're pretty much going to take off, and then we're going to scrape off the excess. I'm going to scrape off the excess. You're going to notice I didn't close these up. I want these to dry nice and thoroughly before we go ahead and close them. If it's a little tacky, it's possible that you'll glue them shut. But once we're done, you can see it moves nice and easy. We're now ready to go ahead and install this onto our airplane. We're going to go ahead and take our fuselage back in the picture, and if you haven't done already, go ahead and remove these little cavities that you see here. You want the top cavities open, and you want both the horizontal cavities on both sides of the fuselage open. I'll just pull off our little rudder control horn too. Now with the hinge line facing down towards the table and our fuselage facing upright, we're going to go ahead and slide this in for a test fit. If we rock it in nice and carefully, you're going to notice the two front tabs are going to engage the front, and that we're going to line up the center tab with the center here. One thing I like to do just to check for square is I like to put this flat on the table, and I like to make sure that the edges of the foam are the same height on both sides. Once you're happy with the alignment and you're happy with the center line, go ahead and take a nice thin bead of glue and lock your tail down. Doesn't take too much, and we're going to come right back with a scrap piece of foam and we'll wipe off the excess. Do the exact same process on the bottom side. Now we're going to go ahead and put our attention towards the rudder. First thing I'm going to do on the rudder is I'm just going to pinch this front end here just to kind of make it pointy. This is going to make it even easier to slide it in and line everything up. Holding the plane on its nose, I'm going to slide the back tab in first. And engage the front and then drop it down in. We want to make sure we have a nice clean fit where the rudder meets the fuselage. We're also going to lay this flat on the table. And doing the best we can, we're going to go ahead and line this up and make sure it looks nice and square. You can even put it on the elevator and just make sure the distance is parallel with the fin. Same process as before, lock it down with some glue. Both sides. Push that excess right into the fin. And while the top half is drying, you can go ahead and put a little bead of glue on the very back. Kind of push my nozzle of my hot glue gun in there and squeegee it out. We're going to let this dry for about 45 seconds. Now that our tail assembly is done, we're going to go ahead and put our attention into the servos, push rods, and control horns. The first thing we want to do is go ahead and guide our push rods through the fuselage itself. To do that, we're just going to go ahead and take our push rod, we're going to rub this back and forth just to kind of loosen the resistance here, and we're going to guide it on through. The push rod end is just going to hang here, and don't worry, it's very easy to grab. Once our push rod is slid through, we're going to go ahead and take our control horn and go into the furthest out hole. We're going to go ahead and simply slip this on. Little twisting motion is all you need and should have very little slop. Now we're going to go ahead and line this up with the slot in our elevator. And with a little rocking motion, it'll pop right down in there. Once we're happy with the fit, we'll come back with our hot glue, put a bead down, and press it into place. A little glue is going to squeeze through the back. Go ahead and just wipe that off with a scrap piece of foam. Now let this dry thoroughly for at least a minute to a minute and a half. This is your control link, so if you lose your control link, you're going to lose your control of your airplane. So let it dry thoroughly and make sure it's strong. We're going to do the exact same process on the other side. We'll pass our push rod through, non-Z bend first. Take our control horn, furthest out hole. You are going to receive 4 control horns, so that way later on if you want to do the aileron mod, you're easily able to do so. Little rocking motion. Press it into place. Make sure we have full deflection. You're going to notice when you press this into place, you want your holes to line up perfectly with your hinge line. That's going to give you equal deflection both directions. A little hot glue. And press it in. Once again, we're going to leave this for about a minute to a minute and a half to let it thoroughly dry. Now for this next step, we're going to go ahead and slide our power pod in because we're going to be gluing the servos down. But what we don't want to do is glue the servos down so low that our power pod is going to be obstructed. So we're going to go ahead and slide this on in. You're going to notice that it slides in just like a rail and even stops at the proper point. Now both of our servos are going to be mounted, and the nice thing about this kit, we wanted to keep it simple. There is no cutting on these push rods. All we have to do is put a Z-bend on the very end. We're going to go ahead and mount our servos high up on the wing like you see here. Now you can mount the servos pointing upwards or downwards, but if you leave them pointing up, there's a good chance you're not going to have to do any reversing on your Spektrum radio. So our first step is to grab the very end of our control rod. We do sell Z-benders if you need. We're going to bend down 90 degrees. And I'm just going to use a piece of wood, scrap, that way I don't push them with my finger. And we're going to rotate 90 degrees. This is called a modified Z-bend. The nice thing about this is you can actually rotate this up and switch holes throughout your control linkage. Before we glue this down, I'm going to go ahead and scratch up the back surface here because we don't want to glue to a shiny, smooth surface. You can use a razor blade or you can use rough grit sandpaper. Just rough up the surface so the hot glue has something to bite. If you have to remove the sticker, make sure you clean it off with alcohol so any sticky residue isn't adhered to it. Now because this is a trainer, we're going to go all the way into the furthest in hole. This is going to give us the smallest amount of movement and enable us not to really have to do much dialing in on our radio. Just grab this and rotate it 90 degrees and it's in. Now where we glue the servo is going to depict where our center line is. You notice as I move it back and forth, the rudder moves back and forth. And that's okay. We want to glue this servo exactly where everything is neutral. That way we don't need to use linkage stoppers and we have a nice firm connection. The easy way to make sure that your surface is level is to take something hard and rigid and hold it on the back and then just push slightly up against it. I'm going to go ahead and take a bead of glue. Once again, I drop this back down in and center up my servo. Notice I'm about 1/8 of an inch below the top ridge. That's going to give enough room for my power pod to slide out. There we go. But not be so high that it rubs into the wing. We'll do the exact same process on the other side. We're going to bend straight down. And just to kind of save our fingers, grab something hard. Now if you're uncomfortable making Z-bends, we sell a really great tool that works just like a pair of pliers and it crimps the perfect Z-bend every time. It's wonderful. I'm going to just cut this a little bit short so it doesn't interfere with the other side. And in this case, I need to remove that sticker. So I'm going to remove the sticker, clean it with alcohol, and scuff the side. If you're more of an advanced pilot, you can go to the middle or even the furthest out one. Just keep in mind if you go to the furthest out one, you may need to go to a conventional Z-bend so your wires don't touch. Same process as before. We're going to find our center point on the back of the elevator, right about there. Take a mental note where it is. Once we're happy with the spacing, we'll lift it up, apply some glue, recenter, and then press down firmly for at least 30 seconds to 45 seconds. This is also part of your control link, so make sure you let it thoroughly dry before you move anything else. Now that we have our servos in and all the connections are ready to be made, let's go ahead and hook up our servos and get them centered or address them with reversing. So right now I have the servo lead for the rudder control. The rudder is going to give us yaw, but in a 3-channel airplane it also gives us bank. And because of this reason, we're actually going to plug it into the aileron port on the receiver. So I'm going to line this up. In this case, the orange is the signal. It'll either be orange or white. I'm going to line up with the aileron port and then press it in. Now we're going to be using the Spektrum DX6E radio system. If you bought one of these, this comes pre-bound. If you need to bind it, look at the manual. It's a very easy process to go through. Now because this is a beginner plane, this may very well be the very first plane you've ever built. If it is, we have a really great beginner series we did a long time ago that's going to step you through everything from choosing your first airplane all the way to channel mapping, controls, and etc. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and plug the elevator into elevator. We're going to reach down here and we're going to grab the ESC, which is our throttle, and plug it into throttle. Now you notice that I have my prop on. We're going to go ahead and remove that right now. Anytime we're ever hooking up radios or dialing things in, we always want to make sure we remove our props. There we go. Our next step is to power on the system. Our radio is powered on first. We're already bound. All of our connections have been made. Now if we pull back on the stick, we should see our elevator rise. If it doesn't, you need to go into your manual and reverse it. On the DX6E, that's as simple as pressing down once on the button, scrolling to servo setup, rolling over to travel, clicking on it, and then scrolling over until we see reverse. From that point on, we can go ahead and we can change our elevator and aileron based on what we need. So going back, if we move our aileron stick right, we should see our rudder go right. If you want to set up dual rates, which means you have two different levels of throw, we give you this little tiny guide here for low rate and high rate. All you simply need to do is hold that against it and adjust your travel to the point where it meets here. Every radio is going to be a little different. That's why they come with manuals. I strongly encourage you to read it and walk through that process. On Spektrum systems, it's very easy to do. We'll go ahead and check the same on the elevator, and that's perfect. Now that our controls are all set up, let's go ahead and just make sure that our throttle is spinning the right way. Now if you followed through the build video with setting up your power pod, it should already be spinning the right direction. If it's not, all you need to do on a brushless system is reverse 2 of the 3 wire leads coming from your motor. And we do have a counterclockwise rotation. That's perfect. We're ready to move on to the next step. In this step, we're going to assemble the landing gear, install it, also add on our optional wheel flaring, put our barbecue skewers in to hold the wings and also the power pod in, and show you how to put in the optional window decal. Now that we have our fuselage built, we're going to go ahead and put our attention towards the landing gear. Now if you're flying off of rough ground or long grass, don't even worry about this step, just fly it without it. But if you want to put it in later, it's a very easy thing. It doesn't actually glue in, it slides in. The first step we're going to do is we're going to bend this landing gear right down the middle. So this is 15.5 inches or 39 millimeters. We're going to go ahead and split the difference. In this case, with the 15.5 inches, it'll be 7 3/4. Now we have this piece of foam here, which this landing gear is going to glue into. You're going to notice this angle right here. When we bend this, we want to match that angle. I like to bend it a little bit sharper than it needs, and then slowly open it up. Perfect. Once we're happy with that angle, we're going to go ahead and just lightly drag this through on both sides. Don't go down and push through the paper. Just give yourself a nice cavity. Once we have this cavity done, we're going to go ahead and push this in just for a test fit. And we're going to measure 4 inches from the edge, right here. We're going to go ahead and take our rod and we're going to bend this horizontal. So what we want is we want this wire to be parallel with this. You can see I just went over a little bit too much. That's okay. All we need to do is flatten it out just a little bit. Same process on the other side. 4 inches down, mark our bend. Bend flat. If at any point you have something like this, it's very easy. All you need to do is just unbend it, give it a little twist, and make sure it's flat. The better you do this, the straighter it's going to roll. I'm going to go ahead and carefully remove this piece now. We'll lay it on the table, make sure we have no other little fine adjustments we need to do. Later on, we're going to come back and cut this off once we put our wheels on. Let's go ahead and remove the center piece of foam that we see here. Now we're going to take our hot glue gun and we're going to apply a generous bead of glue right down to this inner seam. We're going to keep a scrap piece of foam handy and press this down in. A little bit more glue. I'm just going to smear this all over. And we're going to let it dry. Once this is nice and dry, I'm going to put a small bead of glue on the very bottom of this paper here. Once again, the paper passes the heat very easily, so be careful. We're going to fold this up 180 degrees and press down firmly. No worries if a little extra glue squeezes out the side, we're just going to smooth that over. That'd be a great time to go ahead and just put a little extra reinforcement, make sure we don't have any delamination issues. Just kind of use this as a paintbrush and just kind of paint some hot glue in here. We really want to make this piece as strong as possible because we're going to be sliding it in and out depending on where we fly and what kind of options we put on. Now that we have our landing gear bent, we're going to go ahead and slide this in for a test fit. It's going to be a little bit tight at first, and that's exactly how we want it. Notice as we press this forward, it's going to actually groove into both sides of the fuselage. That's perfect. It's going to give us extra support, but it's also going to give it to where we can put our wheel flairings on and make it look really nice. Let's go ahead and slide on our wheels. Just make sure we're happy with the fit and the form. So now that our landing gear and our wheels have all been sorted out and we're happy with it, we can move on to another step that's optional. This is actually going to be for your landing gear flairings. That's going to give that scale cub look. Now if you're new to flying or you're flying off of rough grass, don't even worry about this step. Just leave it the basic wire. Frankly, I like it without this step because I can be really hard on the landing gear and I don't have to worry about hurting the foam. But if you want to do that, all we're going to do is we're simply going to go ahead and remove the cavity of foam. It's a little bit narrower. It's the width of the actual landing gear wire that you see here. And on top of that, we're also going to expose this paper that you see here. Now that we have that exposed, we're going to cut a 45-degree angle. Nice clean bevel. And we're going to give this a test fit. Once you're happy with the test fit, one thing I encourage you is not to glue this onto the fuselage unless you plan on never taking out your landing gear. We're only going to be gluing this mainly on the landing gear wire itself. Alright, we're going to carefully open this up. I'm going to start about a ½ inch away from where the actual flaring meets the fuselage just to make sure I don't accidentally adhere it to it. And I'm going to put a nice healthy bead of glue. Also keep a scrap piece of foam around just to be safe. I'm going to open this up. And slide it in. I'm going to hold it exactly where I want it to be until it's thoroughly dry. Once this is thoroughly dried, we can come back and I'm going to put a nice bead of glue on the very leading edge and then also one parallel in the back. We're going to squeeze this glue out thoroughly as we fold this paper around. Once again, this is the added little scale technique. You don't have to do this. It's only if you want those little scale club flarings. Push that down in there. So if I put this wheel on, you'll see now that this looks a lot more like a Piper Cub on the side. But it certainly doesn't take away if you just have a simple landing gear wheel axle on the other side. We're going to go ahead and repeat the same process on the other side now. Alright, our flarings are on. We're going to go ahead and give ourselves about a 1/4 inch or about 1 centimeter on the outside. Be careful when cutting this because it's a very, very stiff wire. And we're just going to put a nice glob of hot glue on the very end and let it dry. Exact same process on the other side. And typically what I do is just hold it up, spin the wheel. Couple last details we're going to go ahead and do in this step is we're going to go ahead and glue a little piece of barbecue screw on the very end of the tail. Now this doesn't have a typical skid. What we wanted to do is give you the ability to steer in the grass. This is going to protect the bottom of the tail, but also give you the friction and the control that you're going to need to be able to turn it and taxi it. All we need is just a little bead of hot glue. We'll place this right down in there. This step is optional, but it works great. While we're also working with the barbecue skewers, let's go ahead and put the barbecue skewers in the upper wing panels here. We're going to go ahead and guide our barbecue skewer on one side, and then we're going to go through the other. I always like to pass it through one side and then the other, because that makes finding the hole even easier. About the width of our thumb, or 5/8 of an inch. You're going to notice I'm just going to kind of crimp it around, and it'll cut nice and clean. Same process on the back side. Press through one side, and press through the other. Pass it through about 5/8 of an inch. So after we have our skewers in for our wing hold downs, we're also going to pass our skewers through for our power pod. We don't want our power pod to slide out. So we're going to go ahead and poke in on one side, and we're going to poke in on the other side. Now if you're using our speed build kits, all the holes should line up exactly. If you're scratch building it, don't worry if you end up popping through and having to make your own hole on the inside. Once we pop through both sides, we're going to pass it on through. Then I'm going to leave myself about 1/8 of an inch, just long enough to be able to grab it, but not too long. And then we'll cut the other side. Once again, we'll just kind of rotate this. We'll pass on through. Do the same process in the front. And we're good to go. Now if you're purchasing our speed build kit, we are going to include a windshield kit for you, but if you're scratch building, this will be available separately. The Simple Cub is so much cuter with a windshield on it. We're going to go ahead and put that on now. I'm going to go ahead and just do this one piece at a time. Just to make life a little bit easier, we'll just go ahead and remove our wing hold downs here. Line up the top edge. If you press lightly, you'll be able to make sure that you're all centered up. There we go. I'd strongly recommend, if you plan on painting this, save this step for after you painted it. There we go. So right now I'm just gently pushing down on it, making sure I'm happy with where everything goes. So that I can go back. And I'm going to ride this back section here just about 1/8 of an inch down from where the wing is. About 1/8 of an inch gap between the struts. And you can see how this back mask is slightly transparent. As long as you don't push down hard, you're going to be just fine. I'm going to remove that. We make our windshield out of matte black vinyl. It looks really nice no matter what kind of paint surface you put down. Alright, let's go ahead and reinstall our wing hold downs and our barbecue skewers for our power pod. And as we said before, we're actually going to be showing you in a different video some other scale details that you can put on later. But our goal in this video is just to show you the most simple form of the Simple Cub that you can get in the air, for especially when you're learning. Alright, let's go ahead and put on the wings. Now that we have our canopy on, we're going to go ahead and put on our wings. So we're going to take the 2 rubber bands that are included in the kit. You're welcome to use more if you feel it's necessary. We have 1, and we have 2. Last thing we're going to make sure is that our wing is nice and centered on the fuselage so it doesn't bank left or right without us wanting it to. And now that we have our wings on and we flip it over, you're going to see on the wing that they put 2 little globs of glue here. With the Speedboat kit, it will just be 2 little holes, and this is going to be where we balance it at. The way we balance our airplane is going to be dictated by where we put our battery. Now, the perfect balance is a 1000 milliamp Luminaire 3 cell, but you can balance this with anywhere from an 800 all the way up to a 2200 just by where you position the battery. You're going to find with a 1000 milliamp 3 cell that if we put this right pretty much at the very edge, like you see here, it's going to balance really nice for you. So when I put my fingers on this, what we're looking for, especially for the first flight, is just a touch of nose down. If you balance it perfectly level, what you may not know is whether you're tending tail heavy or nose heavy. So just look for that slightly nose down attitude, it's going to fly great. We're now ready to go take it out for its maiden. Alright friends, our FT Simple Cub is now ready for the maiden. As we said before in the introductions, this is the most simple form that you can build this for, but you can grow with it. You can put the ailerons, the flaperons, and other really cool features on it. We're going to show that in a later video. Now if you've never maiden something before, we have a video called 6 Quick Tips for a Successful First Flight. It'll be linked down below. It'll give you all the core understanding, just kind of check and double check to make sure you have a good experience. So I'm going to put this on the ground because we can actually take it off. Anytime you want to fly an airplane, it's a really good idea to pick a nice calm day, and today is absolutely gorgeous. Oh, it flies wonderful. Now this plane balances everything. If you balance the plane right, it's going to fly fantastic. You can still turn nice and sharp, but you're not going to get any bad tendencies like spiraling. You can still do your wing overs, your loops. Our goal with this plane is that it'll grow with you, but you don't have to build an extra wing, and it's still incredibly easy to both fly and to build. Alright, let's go ahead and bring it in for landing. Nope. There we go! Oh, friends, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of the Flite Test family. And also, thank you for sharing the hobbies with others. One of our main visions here is that this is going to be a catalyst to get other people in the hobbies. For all you experts and experienced flyers out there, I hope you use this as a tool to introduce this great hobby to someone else and make a memory with them. We'll see you next time.